Hi, this is Kenzo from Love Life Drawing, and we love hatching. It's not just a way to shade, it can also add extra information about the form of the figure and inject energy to the drawing. Good hatching can make the viewer feel like they're in the hands of a master. So in this video, we're going to quickly go over different types of hatching and their roles. And then we're going to go through a set of exercises to help you improve your hatching. We're going to use this drawing by Raphael, but we've erased the original hatching with Photoshop, and we're going to redo it as part of the demonstration. And we're also going to look at other examples from artists on Instagram who use hatching to great effect. One is called Chris Glib, or at Chris Glib Art, and another called Nick, or an Instagram called at Made in Hammersmith. In some ways, the simplest type of hatching is single parallel hatching. It's one I really like because it's very clean and tidy. Tone is created with uniform parallel lines. You can just vary the density of the lines or the thickness of the lines to create darker or lighter areas. The lines can all go in the same direction for a nice uniform look across the picture, or you can mix up the directions between different patches of parallel hatching. So you might, for example, like to roughly follow the plane of each area, or maybe guide the viewer's eye to the desired focal point in the drawing. Some artists like to create uniform, right-angled cross-hatching, while others use subtler angles. Some artists, like Nick, select angles that follow the plane that the hatching is on, which gives a natural feel and helps explain to the viewer the volume of the figure or the face. The overlapping patches of hatches help explain the changes in the direction of the planes on the surface. There isn't a correct way here. Each gives a different effect, and you can use these effects according to your style. Uniformly right-angled hatching can feel kind of mathematical or mechanical, which might be an effect you'd like to use. Gentler angles might feel a little more natural. The lines of parallel hatching, whether it's single or crossed, is different to contour hatching because it doesn't follow the curvature of the form. So within the hatching, there isn't much sense of volume. Instead, each patch of hatching has a flatter feeling. But that's not a bad thing. It's an effect you can use to your advantage, for example, to give a simple and clean look. Instead, the varying densities and strengths of hatching in combination with the contours is often enough to explain the volume of the form. Notice how Chris's hatching doesn't follow contours or even the planes that they're on. They all go in one direction here, but there's still volume to the figure because of the shapes of the hatched area. Hey guys, this is just a quick note to say if you do like the video, please hit the like button. That lets YouTube know that this is a good video. And if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, we're going to be coming out with really useful new drawing tutorials every week. And also, any feedback that you can leave in the comments would be really welcome. Thanks again. Contour hatching can help give a sense of form to curved 3D shapes. The lines follow the figure's curvature rather than just being parallel. Contour hatching can be crossed or can be single hatching. You can use parallel hatching to establish background values and then add layers of contour hatching on top of it to emphasize the volume and form. There's nothing wrong with mixing and matching. In this Raphael drawing, parallel hatching and contour hatching are mixed, with parallel hatching creating a base tone across an area and contour hatching used when a curvature needs to be emphasized. Just a quick note that hatching doesn't always need to be comprised of very fine lines. You can hatch chunky marks too, especially in a larger drawing. Also, hatching doesn't need to be too technical or correspond only to form and shade. You can also hatch according to feeling, emphasizing movement in what you're seeing. Mako hatches layers of pastel color, balancing warm and cool tones. The hatching loosely follows some of the contours of the figure, but basically it's not following any particular rules. It's just dictated primarily by the movement that she sees in the figure. Van Gogh's Starry Night isn't really hatching, but it's a set of distinctive marks which don't necessarily make sense individually, and when aggregated, when you're looking at all of them together, the pattern really works. There aren't rules to all of this, they're just effects. all sorts of ways to put down marks which have all sorts of effects, and as you learn more effects, you have more tools in your arsenal to create the images that you want to create. Filling 2D shapes with hatching will help develop your physical ability to hatch uniformly and cleanly and within different boundary shapes. So a quick way to start is with some rectangles. You can fill these with varying densities of hatching. From here you could move on to random shapes. So if you're chatting on the phone or waiting for something, you could just grab an envelope or whatever, put down a random squiggle in a straight line and just hatch the area between the two. To understand what hatching does, you can practice shading different 3D shapes to give them a light source and give them volume and form. Here Mako's hatching some cylinders. With the first she's using parallel hatching and then adding a crossed layer. With the second she's using contour hatching. Hatching spheres is another great exercise. And for a less uniform shape, she's moved on to drawing and hatching an apple. And you could watch our video on simplifying tonal shapes if you need help seeing the shapes of the different levels of tone you should be hatching. A fantastic way to practice hatching for figure drawing is by copying the hatching of your favorite artists. So we learned a lot by recreating Raphael's hatching here. If you'd like to download this version of Raphael's drawing as a PDF, the version that doesn't have the original hatching, so that you can practice with it, go to lovelifedrawing.com/hatching. We'll put the link below. You could print it and hatch on it or do it digitally. We found that he was flexible. He didn't just hatch for shading, but for explaining the direction of the plane. Some of the hatching follows the volume of the muscle where he felt more information about the shape was needed. For the head, a lot of the hatching has nothing to do with hair strands. Instead, it follows the shape of the head. And that's in line with our general advice to treat the hair as a 3D mass and ignore the individual strands, except for the stray strands that fall away from the mass. Raphael's hatching describes as much about the form as the contours. It's not just used to fill in the outline, it's much more than that. Maybe we can even think of the contours as just packaging for the hatching. Where there's a clear change in direction, a joint, or something like that, he'll put more pressure into the lines. He builds up layers and isn't afraid to go back and add more layers to a complex area, such as around the waist where there's a little squash in the torso. There's more folds, more planes, and therefore more layers of hatching. Where there's less tension, where there's fewer elements coming together, there might just be one layer of simple single hatching. The multiple layers of hatching don't just tell you about light and dark, but also the complexity of the elements and the tension between them. In our next hatching video, we're going to look at the mechanics of hatching, i.e. what each part of your arm does when using different hatching motions, and how each impacts the quality of the hatching, and also the different ways to touch the drawing instrument to the paper, and how each impacts your hatching. So look out for that. Thank you so much for watching.